This is the story of a kind king who always in search of peace in his kingdom. In a kingdom of rolling green hills and golden fields, there lived a wise and kind-hearted king named Varun. He was beloved by his people, for he ruled with fairness and compassion. His court was filled with scholars, warriors, and advisors. Yet despite their counsel, the king often found himself troubled by three great questions. These questions lingered in his mind, keeping him awake at night. One day, after much thought, he gathered his ministers and said, "I have three questions that have haunted me for years. No matter how much I ponder them, I cannot find their answers. Tell me, who in this land is the wisest of all?" The ministers exchanged glances before one of them stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, there is a monk who lives atop the sacred mountain in the east. He is known to possess wisdom beyond measure. If anyone can answer your questions, it is he." Determined to find the truth, the king set out on a journey the very next day. He left behind his royal attire and dressed in simple robes, taking with him only his most trusted guard. They traveled for many days, crossing rivers, dense forests, and rugged hills. Along the way, the king met many people, farmers tending to their fields, merchants selling their goods, and children playing with laughter in their voices. Though weary, he could not help but notice how each of them lived in the moment, fully immersed in their tasks. Finally, after days of travel, he reached the monastery atop the sacred mountain. It was a humble place, surrounded by ancient trees and overlooking a vast valley where the setting sun painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson. There, seated beneath a great banyan tree, was the monk. His robes were old, yet his eyes were filled with warmth and understanding. He welcomed the king with a smile and gestured for him to sit beside him on the grass. The king bowed deeply and said, "O wise one, I have come from far away to seek your wisdom. There are three questions that trouble my heart, and I hope you can answer them." The monk nodded, his gaze steady. "Ask, my king." The king took a deep breath and spoke his first question. "What is the most important time?" The monk smiled and picked up a small sapling that had begun to grow in the wrong spot. He gently dug around it and replanted it in a better place, where it would have more room to grow. Then he turned to the king and said, "The most important time is now. The past is gone, and the future is unknown. The only time we truly possess is this very moment. What you do now shapes everything that follows." The king listened carefully, his heart stirred by the simple yet profound answer. He thought of all the times he had worried about the future or regretted the past, failing to embrace the present. Then he asked his second question, "Who is the most important person?" At that moment, a weary traveler approached the monastery, his face lined with exhaustion. Without hesitation, the monk rose, fetched water from a nearby well, and offered it to the traveler. The man drank gratefully and bowed in thanks. The monk turned back to the king and said, "The most important person is the one who is with you at this moment. We often seek out the powerful, the learned, or those we admire. But the truth is that whoever stands before you now is the one you should care for, help, and respect." The king's heart swelled with understanding. He had spent years trying to strengthen alliances with distant rulers, while sometimes overlooking the needs of those right beside him, his people, his friends, even his own family. Finally, he asked his third question, "What is the most important thing to do?" The monk gazed at the sky, watching a bird soar freely in the wind. Then, he turned to the king and spoke with gentle conviction. "The most important thing to do is to do good. Acts of kindness, love, and service to others are the greatest purpose of life. No power, no riches, no title is greater than the goodness of one's heart." The king sat in silence, reflecting on the monk's words. He realized that the answers he had sought were not grand or complex. They were simple, yet so often forgotten in the pursuit of power and ambition. Filled with gratitude, the king bowed before the monk and said, I will remember your words for as long as I live. You have given me more than answers. You have given me clarity." He returned to his kingdom with a renewed heart. From that day on, he ruled with even greater compassion. He cherished each moment, valued every person who crossed his path, and dedicated himself to doing good. Under his rule, the kingdom flourished, not just in wealth, but in kindness, happiness, and peace. And the wisdom of the monk, passed down through generations, became a guiding light for all who sought a meaningful life.